This is episode 72 of the SteadyTrade Podcast with your host, Tim Bowen.
If you want a potential short, Stephen, I would short my hair.
And Stephen Johnson.
Recently, the last few months, I read your Profitly post. You have excelled like a mofo.
Today, the guys talk to 21-year-old trader Mason Fecht. Mason made $200,000 over the past few months. Find out how he did it now.
Welcome to the SteadyTrade Podcast. We have Mason here who has had a recent, very, very good few months. It has not been a steady ascent, which is what we normally advocate. But hey, if sometimes you rise above the curb, I would like to say, in a really positive way, then that's super cool.
Rise above the curb, like CURB. Is that like when you're drunk sleeping in the gutter?
I was like, I knew I'd fucked it up.
Curb?
I knew I'd messed it up. But Mason has, if you ever played the game where you throw the ball and it bounces off the curb, did you guys play that or no? You guys are just American football.
Unlike you, Stephen, Mason and I have friends, so we play catch with other people. We don't have to play catch with a wall. Yeah.
But Mason is the recent TempSec student who's got it. It's clicked. He's been you did have a steady incline, Mason, right? But then recently, the last few months, I read your Profitly post. You have excelled like a mofo, right?
Yeah, I mean, the chart, my profit chart went exponential. It went supernova. I'm just hoping it doesn't implode upon itself. I try to make sure that doesn't happen.
Mason, I like you already just because you've got an epic haircut. It's kind of the one that I'm going for, but you're a bit younger and you've got better hair. I sound like Tim Bowen, who's got no hair.
I tried growing my hair out like 4 or 5 years ago. And if you want a potential short, Stephen, I would short my hair. Because
I'll give you a short back and sides.
You would think that, like, I thought, I'm pretty thin. I was like, okay, if I try growing it out, it was a disaster. Yeah, it was
you'll look like a gorilla. But Mason, super. I mean, just from the very beginning, how did you get into training? Trading. For me, I was a little poker player and I did all right at it. What's your story? What's your backstory?
Well, yeah. So basically, for anyone who's listening, you can check out my blog post that's on Profitly, and I kind of go into it a little bit, but I can share a few more details. So around the time I was 16, I started taking a little interest in the stock market, but never, didn't really have any money.
Now, just real quick, obviously you're younger guy. How old are you now?
I'm 21.
Okay. All right. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, that was about 5 years ago. Still in high school. Went and spoke to a financial advisor, a good family friend of ours, and kind of started to learn a little bit. Didn't really take any action, though, until my freshman year of college. I invested in NVIDIA. I thought, it was back when it was in the 20s and stuff, and I was familiar with their processing chips and stuff. I was like, I think they're undervalued, so I'm going to buy them. At the end of the day, I feel like, I know I definitely got lucky. But that was kind of the beginning of my journey, and I had like a 50% return on that.
And it's funny, that's how a lot of people get started. That's kind of how you get quote unquote infected with this bug is, you took the traditional approach. You liked NVIDIA. I'm guessing maybe you were a gamer or whatever. You bought a stock that you liked, and then you get that big gain, and you're like, wow, here's now I'm hooked. So
I just want to. I want to hear Mason's full story, but before I do that, I want to say, Tim, why do you automatically assume that he's a gamer? What makes you?
He's a young guy. I don't think I'm going out on a limb with a young guy in 2018 that is a gamer. Am I going out on a limb, Mason?
Are you a gamer, Mason, or do you read books?
Well, I don't think you're going out on a limb, but actually, no, I've never. I don't play video games at all. I'm a pretty avid reader.
Do you know what? Can Mason?
Producer, stop the tape. Write this down. Stephen was 75 episodes, and Stephen was right.
Yeah, you can't make assumptions because Mason, can you just finish this sentence off for me, Mason? When you assume, what does it do? Do you know the answer to this? Or maybe you're not old enough yet. You're good enough to be at the stock market, but what happens when you assume?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with that phrase.
It's fine. Tim, Bowen, do you know what happens when you
Yes.
assume?
It makes an ass out of you and you.
Okay.
Yeah, you just made an ass out of you and me, brother. You just made an ass out of you and me.
Oddly enough, I do need to pause this podcast, small talk for a minute. When I threw my pen to the ground, it exploded. There's ink all over my floor. So give me like 2 minutes.
Okay, I will take this over. So Mason, you're a young guy. You're an avid reader. What kind of books are you reading?
I mainly just study extremely successful people.
Wow.
I don't know if you're familiar with Ty Lopez and his content, but he kind of introduced me to the eudaimonia, which that's what the Greeks called it. He calls it the good life. And there's the 4 pillars: health, wealth, love, happiness. And so I read books. I like to seek out the best of the best on those 4 topics. And, I go from there. So.
I think that's it's pretty tremendous, because a lot of people would associate Ty Lopez as a modern day internet scam. Say, I've seen him on YouTube. I've seen his ads. It looks too good to be true. He's promising health and wealth and happiness all at the same time. He's a scam. But you are advocating that Ty Lopez is legitimate, right? Is that where we're coming?
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Ty, but I know there's a lot of misperceptions about him. There's a lot of misperceptions about Timothy Sykes. I feel that most successful people in general are just misunderstood. And, because people are only able to see others through their own limited perspective. It doesn't surprise me that the majority see these people, think they're scams, stuff like that. But both of them have tremendous value to offer. And frankly, I would not be where I am without Ty or Tim and other people for that matter. But those two definitely, I'm so thankful for the impact they've had on my life.
Dude, that's tremendously interesting straight from the get-go, because it's just so fascinating to think that so many people think that these guys are scams. But yeah, you are saying I've made how much now? How much money did you make in the stock market?
Over the past couple months, just about 200K.
You made 200 grand in the stock market, and you're saying literally your inspiration is Ty Lopez,
Yes.
and Tim Sykes.
Yes,
it's insane. And I think less people would discredit Tim Sykes, but especially Tyler Cruz, they'd be like, nah, no way. This guy is just walking around and he's famous for his back garden video and by his pool, and that's it. No.
Yeah, no, and
I don't get why so many people hate on. Why do so many people even hate on Ty? I don't really get it.
Wrong perspective.
Maybe it's just because he's flashing all the Lambos and stuff, Probably. But I mean, Tim does the same thing. It's I don't know. It's if people were to open their minds, man, and really pay attention to what the value these guys are offering, they could also see exponential growth and change in their lives. And I'm full supporters of both of them.
That's mega interesting. And Mason, I already want to just light up a doobie with you straight away, because you immediately sound like a cool guy who I want to hang out with. With some interesting shizzle to say on the whizzle. But yeah, I mean, you took NVIDIA and you did well with it, but what got you into these penny stocks?
Well, yeah. So before I actually hit the penny stocks or entered this niche, I started dabbling with options because, I was all about, I wanted to take a small amount of money and grow it exponentially as quickly as possible. And the first thing I came across was options. So that's what I decided to do. And I was actually able to turn 10,000 into about 70,000 in a pretty short period of time. But I lost the majority of that. And so when that happened, I decided it might be time to.
Now you say you lost it just playing options still?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah. So, so I was looking for a mentor, and I wasn't directly looking for Tim Sykes. It was just, I was just looking around, and I started getting all these ads As soon as I literally typed stock mentor on Google, a couple of days later, I get all these ads from Tim Sykes. I'm like, who is this guy? What is this? And I just kept ignoring them. And then I remember one day I was like hanging out bored in my room or something. And finally I decided to give it a click. And oh man, I'm so thankful I did, because I got to learn about him and his story. I read his book, watched all his videos, and I was hooked. I was immediately like, you know what, there's something here. There's an opportunity, and applied for the challenge immediately, because the type of person I am, I'm all about efficiency, effectiveness. I saw that as the quickest way to get what I want. And so I had no problem, making the investment. And so far, I think it's paid off.
Now, I read the blog post that Sykes posted about you the other day, and just kind of marked it up and made a few notes. But so you actually did you watch Trader Checklist then? Is that kind of how you got started, or?
Yeah, so Trader Checklist was the first thing I watched. Okay, nice. I literally took an entire Saturday, watched it. I mean, because it's an 11-hour guide, that turns a lot of people off. But I started watching it, and I was like, wow.
Which drives me nuts, And, it's like, oh, it's 11 hours. Oh, that's too hard. That's too much work. It's like, it's fucking free, first of all.
Exactly.
And secondly, if 11 hours is too much of a roadblock to you, good luck being successful in trading.
Yeah, or successful in anything for that matter. Exactly. I mean, I'm sure y'all are familiar with the 10,000 hours statistic that Malcolm Gladwell came up with. It takes a long time to get good at whatever craft it is that you're going to pursue.
How many hours do you think you've done, Mason? How many hours do you think you've clocked up in trading, just as we're on this topic?
Oh, man. That's tough. I mean, I can't give you a number, but what I can tell you is once I joined the challenge, I studied for the first 6 months. I would say I for sure studied 12 plus hours a day. No nice. Question. No question. Sometimes even more.
Study time. Is that study time or?
That's study time. Yeah, that's straight up studying. And then from there, I kind of took a step back, and by the way, that's all watching the market as well, So I don't know. I can't tell you how many hours I've committed to it, but it's definitely been quite a bit.
But can I just ask you, what is the exact breakdown? Because, I mean, Roland Wolf, who you'll know, and you'll probably meet in the near future. He was always famous for saying that he studied 15, 16, 17 hours a day. And everyone was like, well, what were you doing for 16 hours? So, Mason, what were you doing for those 12, 13 hours that you were studying every day?
Well, so basically, I started off going through all the DVDs, everything that's part of, just so for the listeners, I'm a part of Tim Sykes' Millionaire Challenge. And, everything's included in that. There's video lessons.
Material. Yeah.
A lot of DVDs, webinars.
Probably hundreds of hours of DVDs, thousands of pages of manuals. There's a lot of material there. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. And I went through all of it. I didn't watch all the video lessons. I did watch all the DVDs, though. Almost fell asleep in Michael Good's SEC DVD. I got through it.
You did get through it.
I did get through it. Yeah.
We need. I need to get. Good and I are good friends. We need to I need to get with him, and we should come up with like a trophy or something for the people that managed to get through that entire DVD.
Oh, it was tough. It was tough.
Now, and to the listeners, don't misunderstand me. It is great information.
Oh, absolutely.
The simple fact is breaking down SEC filings is not exactly exciting. Now, it's important, and you should know how to do it, but it's far from exciting. So it's a great video. Michael Good, a good friend, crazy smart guy, but it's dry material for sure.
Yeah, no, but hey, as you already said, it's information that you need to know if you want to become successful in this industry. If you want to alienate yourself from the 90%, I can guarantee you right now, the 90% are not reading SEC filings. So, I'll leave it to y'all for that, but I highly recommend it.
Yeah, no, and I'll say I just want to say the word y'all because I think it's super cool. as an Englishman with a cup of tea. But what was the moment? So you've done all these hours, you've subscribed to the 10,000 hour philosophy. What was it in the market that started clicking for you first?
Well, basically, throughout the past year throughout like the first year of my journey, I had on and off success. It was just, I still struggled with risk management, which is exactly why I joined the challenge to begin with. And basically, a few months back, I probably should rewind for just a moment. So I dropped out of college earlier in 2018. I decided I was going to run an experiment, take a semester off, and it wasn't necessarily working out that well for me, and it was time to come back. I knew school was not the answer for me, so I asked my parents to come back and give me 3 months, just 3 months, and I will move out. And the goal I set for myself was to I intentionally put myself back under pattern day trader rule.
That was one of the points I circled.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to try to trade myself out of PDT. And things just got hot at the right moment. My specialty is definitely marijuana stocks. I know exactly what makes those move. That's definitely my expertise. And, that started getting hot right around the time that I laid down this goal for myself, the 3-month goal. And I just kept, rinsing, repeating, cutting losses quickly. And I would just let my winners run. Most of my trades were swing trades. So those, if you go look at my trades on Profitly and that stretch I had, I would say my average percent gain was somewhere around like 40, 50%, and this was happening overnight, just over and over and over again.
It's funny. We talk about falling asleep during the SEC filings DVD as you and I, or more you, talk about going long marijuana stocks, swing trading them. I can see Steven's eyes glazing over, he's like, when are we going to talk about shorting a 1 million float stock up 300%? That's what I want to talk about.
That's not for me. That's just a disaster waiting to happen. Shorting honestly terrifies.
Mason, I've been looking for a new podcast co-host. Get a sec. Send me your resume.
I think Mason's the man. I think he's the one to take over.
Well, actually, I'm starting my own podcast here soon. So,
hey, I did my due diligence. I did my.
I have to deal with Steven.
No, but everybody. Well, okay. Phase 1 of education and basic learning. Everybody knows, especially if they've watched the Tim Sykes DVD Spikeability. Everybody knows that one of the main catalysts is sector momentum. And then phase 2 of learning is everybody knows that sectors like the shipping sector and the weed sector. And say, for example, there's a famine in Africa. There's a sector with companies related to safety needles or something. Everyone knows that there's sectors that move hot. But what people don't know is, when do you buy the hot sectors and when do you buy the weed sector? And can you give some advice to the listeners as to what is the ingredients that you weigh up before taking a trade to nail these 50%ers that you're hitting?
There's so many catalysts. There's so many things I take into account. Basically, whenever I'm going to take a long trade and I'm looking for it, to go up substantially in price, essentially go supernova, there's 2 different patterns that I'll trade. One being a breakout, which I define as hitting new highs over daily resistance levels that had a substantial amount of volume in the past. So that's the first pattern. And those are the plays that are going to lead to the higher percent gains, is the ones that are breaking out to new highs. It doesn't necessarily have to be all-time highs. That definitely helps, but it needs to, at least be like a new yearly high or something like that. And then the other pattern is just a solid first green day, which is a former runner. And, ideally they have news, very strong volume, closing near its highs. There's holding a really solid support level so that I have a good area to risk off of. There's a lot that goes into it. So hopefully I answered your question there.
No, Mason, I get it. And I think you've said the perfect answer, and you've said the same answer that Tim Sykes gives in DVDs, but it's just, it can't be that simple because, I mean, the trading world is the matrix, right? It's 95% of people don't get it. And you are right now just giving the plain simple answer. I mean, is it really that simple? Because if it's that simple, why doesn't everyone get it? Is it patience that you have?
Well, here's my answer to that, Stephen, is that I noticed, so I remember when I first started studying and I heard Tim explaining all of these things, I was like, wow, that's so simple. Like,
yes.
He makes it so clear. And then I went out into the market and I see all this random shit going on. Like, there's so much noise. And I think that's the problem. I think most people get caught up in all the other garbage that's going on. And whenever because I would say I strayed from the path of that the simplistic outlook on the way the market works. And whenever I was able to get back to that and ignore all the stuff that was getting in my way in the first place, that's when I found my success. So to answer your question, yes, it really is that simple. It really is.
If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see it. But one of the highlights that I made was a passage in this Sykes bio or bio profile of Mason, and I think the only bolded section is a point that he talks about simplicity, and in bold, the most important part, he chose to ignore everything else. So I think I'm just getting to know Mason, just read this profile today, and I talked to Sykes a little bit about him, but to me, to answer your question on behalf of Mason, Stephen, I think KISS is why he has been so successful, is just focusing on a few simple things. So,
actually, Tim, I'm glad you bring up KISS, but you were actually the first person I had ever heard that little acronym from.
You're a reader. You've had to see it.
No, I'm serious. It was a webinar like a year ago that you gave in the trading challenge, and you said KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And I'm like, that little program goes off in my mind occasionally. So.
Nice.
Thank you for that.
And I'm just going to play devil's advocate again and be the audience's perspective and say, fine, you're going to say keep it simple, stupid. You're going to only buy these breakouts on these wheat stocks when the sector momentum's hot. What are you doing the rest of the time? If you're keeping it simple, stupid, what are you doing the rest of the time?
Well, fortunately over the past few months, there's been opportunities every day, so it hasn't been a problem. The past few weeks with the market coming down, I've noticed substantially less opportunities. And, I've taken a couple of, relatively still small losses, but stupid losses because I didn't stick to my own rules. I didn't keep it simple. So basically the way I plan to adjust is, accept the fact that there are going to be less opportunities right now, but I still see them coming and going. And it may only be a couple times a week, but that's what I have to focus on, and I have to accept that. And as long as I do that, I believe I will continue to be profitable.
Okay, I've just got one other question, and then I'm going to let Tim run 3 or 4 because I know I've dominated a bit. But when the market is quiet, do you ever just think strip club, or like, or just hit a club, not even a strip club. I'm just gonna go with some bros and do something cool. You're a young guy, smoke a doobie. Do you not want to is it not cheaper for you making this much money to just hit strip clubs? Will that not save money?
Well, actually, I was in Miami 2 weeks ago. I just got back from Austin this past week. So I did vacation, but it wasn't even really a vacation. I was actually there for business for both of those things. The type of person I am, I have these really ambitious long-term goals for myself. And I've found a way to integrate fun and work all together. I've really set up this lifestyle that I like. So, strip club, not necessarily my thing. Occasionally.
Mason, don't fall for the trap. See what Stephen is trying to do. What Stephen is trying to do is the crabs in the bucket. He's trying to drag you down into his moral depravity. Next thing you know, you'll be drinking before noon. Staying at the strip club all night. You'll be considering, as Stephen actually was considering, an opioid habit. So don't fall into the trap.
Mason, I'm just wondering because you'll be at the next Tim Sykes conference, you'll be at the next one, highly likely, and you'll be a speaker. I'm just wondering if we're going to hit a strip club followed by shoot us. I'm just wondering. I'm just trying to find this
the
out.
conferences are in Orlando, right? Is Orlando known for its strip club scene? I don't think
not
so.
really, not really, but they are there. And I would like to smoke a doobie and go to one with you.
Well, hey, maybe what we could do, we could head out. We could take a little late night trip down to Miami. You know,
Don't do it.
Get
Don't fall for
back
it,
by the next morning.
Dude, I'm
Steven
good.
is like
do
the
it.
devil, but don't get lured into it.
But
One thing I do want to talk about is you intentionally took yourself back under the PDT. So that is, I think, especially to a lot of people that read this, whether you're Profitly Post or Sykes profile, to 99% of new traders, getting over the PDT is the holy grail. Explain to me the psychology, what was the rationale of willingly taking yourself back under the PDT?
It's pretty simple. I mean, I wasn't being disciplined above it. So in order to, enforce that discipline, you only get 3 day trades in a rolling 5-day business period. I mean, I basically disregarded anything that could have even made me money. I just focused on the absolute best things I saw. And whenever I did that, as soon as I adopted that mentality, I mean, I was out of PDT in like 3 days. Yeah. So I was like, wow, you're telling me it's that simple? I could have done that months ago and I would have grown. Yeah.
And I think that's a powerful point, and we've talked about it a lot on the podcast. Steven will, I'm sure, mirror that. I mean, he kind of got
mirror
over
or a mirror,
either or. It's a lot like when you look into a mirror, it could be either or. But the idea would, Steven got over the PDT and kind of. I mean, you lost a little bit of discipline, didn't you? You kind of.
I did. I've never.
Type thing.
No, my best trading and my best success as a trader was when I was about 22K. And I got to 23, then 24, then 25, then 26, then 27, and then I battled over and under 25 ever since. It's been a funny story, and I mean that could lead to another question. I mean, Mason. I mean, as the French proverb goes, "un maison." You being the house and the house always winning. You see where I went with that. I mean, what? It's terrible, but it's kind of funny.
Yeah, you're full of
It's a little bit funny though. But what would your 3 best pieces? I mean, 2 questions. What would your 3 best pieces of advice be, just to help someone get started, and maybe to help someone get started over PDT, or just to help someone get started in general? Because everyone's looking at you thinking he's made 200 grand. Like, what's the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory magic secret or the ticket?
So I kind of have a lot to say about all of this. So just give me a moment. I'll go through all of it because I kind of want to break it down into a few different stages.
Cool.
So first of all, what do I have that works? I have a successful trading system. Okay. But before you can set up a successful trading system, I think you need to set up a successful learning system. And so I believe that I learned this pretty efficiently and effectively. But if I could go back and do it again, this would be my advice. So the first thing you need to do is you need to go watch some sort of educational resource and understand what the patterns are in the stock market. Your second step is going to be to go watch those patterns play out in the market over and over and over and over and over again, because that's the only way you're going to get it. The Dalai Lama, he talks about 3 stages to mastery. The first stage is learning the material. The second stage is understanding and comprehending it. And the third stage is making it instinctual. So if you go learn the material, then you watch it play out over and over and over again, and you begin to understand what's happening, eventually you're going to see, that perfect setup that you've been watching, and it's going to be instinctual. You're going to know exactly what it should and shouldn't do, and that is when you will have the confidence to actually take the trade. But before, you go out there and start risking your hard-earned money, I definitely recommend paper trading for a little while. prove to yourself that you can grow that fake account, then start sizing in small. And then once, because the emotions that are involved with real money aren't there with the fake money, you know? And then finally, you'll get to the point where you can say, okay, I'm going to start sizing in because I'm extremely comfortable with what I'm doing. So yeah, I think, before you set up this successful trading system, you guys set up the successful learning system. Next, I guess, I laid out 3 pieces of advice in my blog post for anyone who hasn't checked that out. And I kind of want to just reiterate those. I mean, the most, in my opinion, and something that has definitely led me to be successful is, I would say, my rule number 1 is still cut losses quickly / intelligently. But I would say 1A is the entry is the most important component of the trade. I can't tell you how many times I was shaken out of trades because I would set an arbitrary risk level, which looked good on the chart, but at the end of the day, it wasn't the level that mattered. And so I made it a priority of mine where I would only enter a trade if I could get in at exactly what I term key support. That's the only way I'll take a trade. So yeah, the entry is the most important component. Next, you got to sell into strength. You got to take profits along the way. And in addition to that, you have to take a step back and stop worrying about the P&L, unrealized, because you're going to be tempted to take the majority of your profits once you start getting like 10 or even 5-10% gains. Take a step back and focus on the big picture. Like I said, I'm a swing trader pretty much. Very rarely do I take day trades. And whenever I told myself, Mason, you are a swing trader now, you're not a day trader, I found the success that I've had recently. And, lastly, I feel like I'm just rambling on here, but
not at all, dude.
You have to master market psychology. That's by far the most important thing in this entire game, is understanding exactly what all players are thinking.
Yeah, man, I tell you, that was great stuff. And, I think it really summarizes something we talk about constantly, is that, everybody, and we've quoted it a million times, that 90% failure number. And it's, I say it, it's like the 90% of the 90%. It's because they don't have that mindset, that process type methodology that you had. If you're listening to this podcast, nowhere in that, 5-minute presentation did Mason say, I was going to get rich in a month, I was going to get rich in 2 months. He approached this as a system, as a process, and said, hey, if I can work through these phases, then I feel like I will get to the point where I will be a profitable trader. That is the mindset you have to have. If you're showing up here, if this is the first podcast you've ever listened to because you want to make $200,000 in 2 months like Mason did, good luck. Take stuff from him. But, the idea is you got to have this plan, this process, not get rich in 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, I think the majority of people with that mindset, they're transferring their money from their brokerage account into mine. That's just the reality.
Yeah. Listen, I've got to ask you because I love speaking to traders who are switched on, which is derogatory to other traders a bit, but whatever. But what can you tell? What are your favorite few DVDs? What did you learn the most from? Because this is a good advocate for others who are learning, who want to purchase the right education.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think every single one of them played some sort of role in my success. But if I could limit it down to just 3, number 1 for sure, Trading Tickers by Tim Grattani.
Yes.
No question about it. Oh my God, there's so much value there.
Yeah.
It's I get people like messaging me like, oh, I don't want to pay for that, stuff like, oh man, I think he charges like $1,000. You realize this guy's made over $7 million in profits. Like, you're getting that at such a discounted rate. You got to buy that DVD. Next, how to make millions for sure. And lastly, penny stocking framework. I forget if it's part 1 or part whatever whatever. The one that goes over the 7-step framework, that DVD.
Yeah, there's no pod. I think there is a pod dirt, a penny stocking framework, but it's not out yet. But yeah, I mean, just to refresh for the listeners, you've got the one which is the beginning of the run. The 2 is lifts up a bit. The 3 is the ramp. The 4 is the floor. The 5 is the bounce. The 6 is the drop, and the 7 is the dead cat bounce or whatever. That's what you're referring to, right?
Exactly. Yes.
And yeah. It's the penny stocking framework. It's way old, right? It's way old, but Sykes is bringing out a refresher, I think, this year.
Yeah, I think it's relative. I think it's pretty old. I don't remember exactly, but man, that 7-step framework. At the end of the day, what I came to realize is like it's just human psychology written all over a chart. So if you can master that, I mean, it's that pattern's been around for.
That's a great quote, because I mean, people often. Great insight, Mason, because people often don't think about that. They see these candles and it's like, okay, why are these candles doing that? And now not necessarily as much in like a long-term investment like an Apple or something, but when we're talking about momentum stocks, weed stocks, Bitcoin stocks, that chart is just it's a painting of human emotion all over that chart. That's what those momentum stock charts are.
No, exactly. And I think that's why it's so important that you master it. You understand exactly what's going on.
Oh, and Mason, you seem like a cool mofo. You remind us a little bit about, and when I say is, I mean us. No, when I say is, I mean me. It's Jody Tyler. You remind me of the guy from The Hangover. Who's the guy from The Hangover? Bradley Cooper. You remind me a little bit. Well, like a much better trader, because Bradley Cooper's not a good trader. You remind us of Bradley Cooper for some reason.
Hey, I've never, I just got
Mason. I would be careful what you say next, because I think this is, I can kind of read between the lines. I think this means that Steven officially has a crush on you. So,
oh man,
yeah. So be careful where you tread from here on.
I just think he's a bro. I'm like, Phil, I want to do The Hangover with him. I just want to get fucked up.
I'm starting to have second thoughts about that trip down to Miami and next week's conference, man. But maybe if Bowen comes along and supervises.
There you go. I can chaperone. Yeah.
Bowen is not invited. But if Mason, you're a legendary dude. You're a very, very easy interviewer. I can safely say we've interviewed a ton of people on here. You and Roland Wolf have definitely been the best, the easiest to interview in terms of content. The producer's like, because he's like,
yeah, no offense to anybody else that we've interviewed.
No, but I mean, I don't give a shit. If I'm being honest, I don't give a shit. I'll be honest, and I'll say you're a very easy interview, you and Roland. It's been super cool interviewing you, and because you've been good, can you close out with just three good pieces of advice to give to people who are struggling? Because let's face it, 95% of people are.
And that's probably why they're coming to the podcast. We value every listener, but I'm sure a lot of them are coming to this podcast to get some tips to get them over that hump or make them a little bit better. So.
Yeah. Well, first of all, appreciate the kind words there. I'm really happy to be here. I'm so honored you guys invited me on. So thank you so much for that. At the end of the day, guys, one of the most important pieces of advice I've ever gotten, and invest in yourself, invest in your knowledge and your education, and think about that future version of yourself. Yeah, it's going to suck that you have to put in all this work right now, but at the end of the day, you're going to be happier because of it. When you can, a few years down the road, look back and say, wow, like you can reflect on the person that you were and the person that you've become. There's this great quote from Thomas Paine that I love. It says, what we obtain too cheaply, we esteem too lightly. And at the end of the day, all that hard work is, you're going to appreciate it. And if you become successful without having to put in all that work, you're not going to value it, and you'll likely just, lose all your money or whatever. Anyway, there's another, fool and his money are soon parted, So let me think. What else? I mean, I guess when it comes to
think technical. What can people do tomorrow to become a better trader?
I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like so much of the work that I've done on myself to become a successful trader doesn't even necessarily directly I didn't go out and read a trading book. It was all this stuff I was doing on the side, mainly having to do with psychology, that has led to my success in the market. So, I mean, I guess technical advice, focus on breakouts, first green days. Like, that's it. And morning panics on overextended stocks that have been running for several weeks and they just drop 50%. Like, that's what you have to focus on. But at the end of the day, I'm still going to stand by studying human psychology. There's nothing more important in my opinion. I recommend reading Poor Charlie's Almanac by Charlie Munger. That's Warren Buffett's business partner. I would argue that, everybody knows who Warren Buffett is. I would argue that Charlie Munger is even more brilliant than he is. The guy's self-made billionaire, and that book that I just recommended is a little expensive. It's like $100 or something like that. But man, if you can put it in perspective, you're getting a self-made billionaire's knowledge. You could argue the value of that book is $10 billion, and you're getting it for $100. So
yeah, it drives me nuts when people balk at the price of a book. I'm like, man, it could be a terrible book that you pay $20 for, and you'll still easily get the value out of that. And yeah, if you can peer into Charlie Munger's mind for $100 freaking bucks, quit being so freaking cheap and buy the freaking book, man.
Yeah, I know. But that's the thing. We all need to, adjust our perspective. That's for sure.
Well, Mason, I'd like to thank you for coming on. Would love to have you back again. Now, here's where I got to put on my crusty old veteran hat.
Which is crusty.
It is crusty. Yeah. Big thing is, man, and I see that in you. I really see that you're a humble guy, but I've seen so many, traders that rise rapidly, get cocky, and try and get outside of their comfort zone. They start trading, they build up a bunch, they build up a couple $100,000 in weed stocks. Next thing you see them, trading big board stocks, or maybe they're not even familiar with shorting, and they're swing shorting some of these stocks that hang around forever and end up taking those big losses. So, and again, I'm not saying you wouldn't keep this mindset, but, stay humble, keep doing what you're doing. And man, I think, based on the stuff you've talked about and the stuff in the blog post, it's like, don't try and be all things, man. Just keep grinding, keep doing what you're doing, and you can be successful doing just a few things in the stock market.
And Mason, all I'm saying is just, if you ever want to go to Miami, hit up a strip club, have a cigar, then I'm your man, brother. We'll get fucked up.
Well, hey man, I'm in Miami pretty often, so if you're ever down there, you hit me up, and we'll go to, I think it's called like Tootsie's or something.
Cool, dude. Let's smoke a bong and have a good time. I think it's legal there now.
For sure. Well, once again, guys, thank you so much. Tim, I appreciate, what you just told me. I agree. I'm terrified of shorting. So I like to think that I won't have an issue with that, especially when it comes to cutting losses and everything. Like, it terrifies me. Anything where you could technically lose infinite amount on your money doesn't sound like my type of gig, But I hope that this all happened so quickly. It's happened very fast. I remember there was a stretch of a few days where, like a 5-day period, I made almost $100K in 5 days, and it was just like it was so much so fast. I've noticed a couple times I feel like I forget what that's worth to me, and I'll take like a stupid trade. Fortunately, no big loss. Well, one big loss, but I'd like to think that I'm on the right path, and I'm just going to keep sticking with it, and hopefully, I don't know what the time frame will be, but I'd like to get to that $1 million mark and continue to ride this journey out.
Awesome.
By the way, if you're interested in any of my content, you can check me out on social media. That includes Profitly, Instagram, Twitter. My handle is Mason_Fecht. You can also check me out on YouTube. I just put up a
real quick, Mason, just for the help of the listeners, I'd spell that out for them. Just make
okay.
Sure, since Steven botched your last name,
Okay. So that's Mason _Fecht, MASON_FECHT. I'm the only one out there, so you shouldn't have a hard time finding me. But I just put up a video on YouTube, a nice half-hour video on how to buy breakouts. So definitely check that out. There's more content coming. So, I've been getting a lot of questions recently, and I feel as my story spreads, that'll probably continue. And it's hard for me to respond to every single person's DM and everything. So please check out my content. I will be going over everything that has made me a successful trader. Obviously not all in one video, but there will be a lot of different blog posts, video lessons, stuff like that. So check it out, and I wish you all best of luck on your journey.
And I'm hoping Steven follows you on Instagram and learns a few healthy habits as opposed to drinking, strippers, and staying up all night and eating cheeseburgers. So check out Mason's Instagram. Very inspirational. So again, if you're listening on iTunes, be sure to head over to SteadyTrade.com. Mason talked about his Profitly post. I talked about Tim Sykes' blog post profile. All of these will be linked below. So if you are listening on iTunes, you're on the treadmill or you're driving to work, make sure to head over to SteadyTrade.com. Everything will be linked up below. And would like to thank Mason again, and would like to thank everybody for listening, and we'll see you next episode.
Hi, this is Aaron, aka AA Ron from New York City, and I like to go outside and find a stray dog, preferably an aggressive breed like a pit bull or a Rottweiler. Then I get real close, stare it down eye to eye until it starts to chase me. Then I run. That's right, I run while listening to Steven and Tim on the SteadyTrade Podcast. You can register to win real actual prizes at their website, SteadyTrade.com. And if you really like what you hear, give the podcast a 5-star rating and write a glowing review on iTunes. I did, and this is how we say goodbye in New York City.